You don't know what exactly you're passionate about, you should think about what your community needs and become passionate about it, which I think is a really good piece of advice and has stuck with me until today. Sometimes you're a bit unsure of what you want to pursue, and that's okay because we're only in our 20s or we're only teenagers, and that's all right. You're not meant to have everything.
Hello and welcome to the Padlocks and Pathways Conversation, where we inform, challenge, and inspire students by allowing people to share their stories as humans and professionals. In today's episode, we are joined by a special guest, Keshini Vijayan. After completing her undergraduate Bachelor of Advanced Science degree at the University of Sydney, Keshini completed her honours thesis in immunobiology, where she worked with some of Australia's leading scientists and academics to investigate immune responses to COVID-19. Throughout her degree, she's developed a passion for medical research. At 21 years of age, Keshini's work in esophageal cancer and epidemiology has been published by the Springer Link academic journal. Her interest in the health and well-being of young people led her to co-author an article with Dr. Melissa Kang in an Australian media publication, which some of you may be aware of, called The Conversation, where she consulted with young people in her community to examine the impact of the COVID-19 virus on Australian communities. She's also a youth representative on an advisory group at the Ministry of Health. Alongside her university degree and research, she also works part-time as a medical secretary at the New South Wales Coroners Court and Forensic Medicine Complex. Right now, Keshini is looking forward to starting a new chapter of her life as a medical student at the University of Sydney Medical School starting in 2021, which is pretty exciting. With that being said, Keshini, thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
So with these conversations, what we try to do is capture and reflect the experience of young people starting from those later years of high school. So in Australia, that will be typically year 11 and year 12. So that's where we'll start. One of the important messages or principles of these conversations is to understand how people make decisions about what they're passionate about and what they're interested in, and how they come across those opportunities. And I think those questions can be quite difficult for a student, someone who's 15, 16, 17 years of age, who's really, trying to find their feet, particularly as their high school career comes to an end. So to start, I just wanted to get to know you a bit better. So how would you describe your approach to those later years? Were you someone that really excelled academically? Were you someone that knew what you were passionate about from a young age? Or were you still exploring your interests at that stage of your life?
That's a good question. I think in high school, I was pretty much lost most of the time. I didn't really know exactly where I wanted to end up in, but I always knew that I wanted to work with people. I think I knew at that age I wouldn't be happy working at a desk job. I preferred personally working with people. So I always knew that I would pursue something where I had lots of interactions with people. But in my later years of high school, I think I was pretty much very academically focused. I wasn't as balanced as I would like to be now. But yeah, I focused mostly on academics. And I think because I was so academically driven, I focused a lot on studying, and I sort of developed a passion for studying and learning. And so that led me to the path that I am on now, a really academically rigorous journey.
So when you say that you were quite academically driven, did you have a particular goal or an endpoint in mind when you were in those later years of high school?
Maybe in year 11, not so much, but I think in year 12, I was really inspired by biology because I took biology. So I really enjoyed what I was learning. I really didn't feel like it was work to me. I really enjoyed it. So that really inspired me to pursue medicine, one of the reasons why. So I decided then that medicine was something that I would likely pursue, but I felt at age 18, I was still a bit young to make that commitment. because medicine is a huge commitment and it's a very, very long journey. So I thought at 18 I was too young. So I never attempted to apply for undergraduate medicine. And instead I thought, let me do science, explore biology more, see if I enjoy it. And if I do, then I can apply for postgraduate medicine. So we live in Australia, and so we're lucky to have that option to do postgraduate medicine. So yeah, I think that was my journey that eventually led me. In my undergrad degree, I really enjoyed biology and I really enjoyed what I was learning. And I volunteered a lot, and I think it really opened my mind into jobs in healthcare. So I think that's what eventually led to me pursuing medicine.
So you mentioned a couple times there that when you took biology in high school, that sort of facilitated a passion and interest to pursue medicine. So what was it about that biology course that sort of piqued your interest there?
Well, biology back in the day with the old syllabus for HSC, it was a lot of animal and plant biology. So that was okay for me, but there were occasional topics where we learned about human anatomy and stuff like that. And I just thought it was the most amazing thing. One of the best things I ever learned at high school was immunology, which sparked me to pursue an immunology degree. I really think the immune system is so amazing, and I was really, really interested in it when we first learned about it in high school. So yeah, that was my experience with biology.
Yeah. And so you mentioned, already that you are quite academically driven. And I mean, it's for those people that actually know you, it's no secret that, you've done quite well academically as well. So, whether it be at university, receiving Dean's prizes, scholarships, or achieving state ranks at, when you sat the HSC, yeah, as I said, it's no secret that you've done well and excelled academically. So, I mean, for those people, students rather, in those later years of high school, what were some of the habits or practices or mindsets that really helped you succeed academically?
Hmm. Um, for me, for the most part, I enjoyed learning. So it wasn't too much of a task for me to do my homework or to study. But at times you feel demotivated. And I think everybody feels like this, especially when you don't enjoy what you're learning and it feels like a task. So for me, my biggest advice is routine and discipline. I think if you just
Mm.
make a routine and you just stick to it regardless of what you feel, if you don't let your emotions stop you from doing the work you have to do, I think that's the secret to success, in my opinion. That's what I try and practice. Just building discipline and routine and sticking to that as much as you can, I think really helps you just get the work done and avoid procrastination.
You mentioned something interesting there. So you said that you sort of alluded to the fact that, when you're working, it sort of seems like sort of effortless and it doesn't really like feel like work, I suppose. So is that something where you knew that you were sort of on the right track and you were sort of following your passion and interest when, studying or whatnot doesn't become like a chore or a hassle? It's something that you actually enjoy. Is that something that you experienced or not?
Yeah, definitely. I enjoyed learning for the most part.
Mm,
So, especially sciences. So that's how I knew that that's where my passion is, and that's where I wanted to continue my career with, I guess. So, yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Mm.
Okay, so after you graduated high school, obviously you'd chosen to pursue tertiary education. Now at the University of Sydney. Another thing that we try to reflect with these conversations is to capture a realistic depiction of how a young person pursues personal and professional development. I think that's a really important part, that realism and authenticity of messages that you put out there, and really to show that it's okay to have dilemmas, doubts, and conflicts when you're on that path and on that journey. So particularly in that period when you were transitioning from high school to university, do you remember any real prominent concerns or doubts you had?
Definitely. I was very nervous actually before starting university. And I had been told multiple times if I do a science degree, I would never get a job. And I'm signing myself up for failure. So
Really?
it really, yeah, it was really worrying at points. I felt really discouraged, demotivated.
Hmm.
Um, but I think I just kind of trusted myself, and I just thought it doesn't matter if we make mistakes at a young age. There are options to quit if you don't like what you're doing, sorry. And You can always transition to another degree or explore other options, take a gap year. I feel gap years actually really help sometimes gain perspective. So for me, yes, I had a lot of doubts and I was really worried of like how I would progress in my career and what options I had, because I was told science really limits your career options. When I actually go into science, I realized that it's actually the opposite. A lot of companies are looking for STEM graduates. So it doesn't limit your options at all, in fact. So I, in fact, felt more motivated actually when I began my science degree. um, and yeah, I just trusted myself and I just enjoyed the process. Like I have to say, my undergrad degree was the best 4 years of my life. It's been such a good experience, just because I let myself enjoy what I was learning, enjoy the university experience. University isn't just about studying, there's so much more. So I felt like I really developed more as a person. And my advice to high school students worrying about that transition is to just relax and enjoy the journey. If you're not sure if you're pursuing the right path, that's okay. Just try something out. If you don't like it, you always have the option to quit it and try something else or give yourself a break. There's no pressure at all.
Right. I think that's something that I personally resonate with as well, is that the flexibility of university, I suppose. I mean, I sort of echo like some of the sentiments that you touched on there about, you going into university and you think it's the be all and end all. And, it's a big
Mhm.
decision to make when you're 18 about what you're going to study and what you're going to pursue. But, something that I don't think is as well known is that, it's okay to, change your degree if you don't like something. Having that flexibility and option is always available with your university degree. I mean, I'm sure you're the same. Like we probably know so many people who have, gone into university studying one thing and come out, graduating with a completely different degree. So I think that flexibility and, options you have with university is a message that a lot of young people need to hear as well. So you touched on there that you spent 4 years in your undergraduate degree of advanced science, focusing on molecular biology, genetics, and immunobiology. Is that right?
Yes, it's a
Yeah. Okay.
mouthful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I must admit, I practiced it a few times before this interview. So one thing, so you mentioned there that it actually expanded your horizon and expanded the scope of opportunities for you. But initially, what motivated you to choose the advanced science degree coming out of high school?
So like I said, I think it was mainly my interest in biology. I knew
Mm,
definitely the sciences was where I wanted to go. I had no interest in the other areas. Um, so I went to USYD's open day. I was really keen on USYD from a long time ago. I just always admired the university and always had known it was a good university. So I went to their open day. I spoke to people. I learned about the options they have. And I did my own research as well. I kind of spoke to who I knew who was at the university, talked to them about the experience. Um, and I applied for a scholarship there as well, which really, when I got the scholarship, it really influenced my decision to go to USYD.
mm.
So yeah, I think it was more just like speaking to people, researching about the degree made me choose that degree. As also with the science degree at USYD, they have this program called the Talented Student Program, which doesn't exist anymore because they've just changed it last year to something else. It's called the Dayel Scholars Program, I think. But that really motivated me to pick this degree because this TSP program or Talented Student Program, now the Dayel Scholars Program, it really allows you to work with researchers. And I was really interested in that, doing lots of research throughout my degree, and they let you do it for a certain number of credit points. So no other university offered that, and that really, I guess, motivated my decision to go with advanced science at Sydney.
So how did you come across the TSP program, and what sort of projects and work were you doing on that program?
Yeah, so I think I was invited to go to a talk about the TSP program.
Mm.
Um, I think this was during orientation week, actually. They invited a bunch of students to come listen and hear what it was about. Um, and I just loved it, like hearing ex-students talk about what they had done. I knew this is for what I wanted to do. And
What
yeah,
had they
so I
done?
So
Yeah.
the other students that were there at the event were talking about projects they had completed with their supervisors. So whether it was in physics, engineering, biology, chemistry, they had all completed research projects with certain supervisors from different faculties, and they were really involved. It was really hands-on, which is what I wanted to do. I
Mm,
wanted to be involved directly in a research project, contribute to research and get some value out of it, and contribute something as well to the research world. So that's what
mm.
students in first year of their degree at the age of
Wow.
18, 19 are doing. And I really wanted to do that as well. So it was really exciting opportunity.
And what sort of research and project did you do across that program?
Yeah, so I was lucky. I had done TSV throughout, I think, every semester in my degree. So I had done like about six, more than six actually, projects. So I've done a bunch of things in different areas, mostly in cancer
Mm,
research. Um, But most of them are just like molecular biology kind of projects. They're very, very detailed, a lot of lab work. I've also done a couple things on herpes virus and stuff like that. So it's just, you get little snippets of the research world, which I think is really cool. And for science students looking to go into research, I think that is definitely a good avenue to pursue. Because if you're unsure of what the research world looks like, TSP really gives you a good opportunity to look and see how researchers work and can help you make a decision if that is the kind of lifestyle you want.
So in addition to the TSP program, alongside your degree, you also engaged in, other extracurricular activities, predominantly volunteering ones at that. So you were a member of the Wellbeing, Health and Youth Commission. You represented the Cancer Council New South Wales in numerous roles, whether it be a community member, program assistant, or events volunteer. And recently, you also were a youth representative at New South Wales Health. As I mentioned, a lot of those were volunteering opportunities. So my question to you is, what factors did you take into account when deciding to undertake a particular opportunity?
Yeah. So I think in university, you'll come across a lot of opportunities. There's heaps of societies to join, heaps of volunteering opportunities, and the uni really encourages you to join all of those essentially. And if you have a lot of interest, it's difficult to pick what you want to do. But I think you've got to prioritize what you need and what interests you, I think. You can't say yes to everything or you'll just overwhelm yourself. That was me at one point. I was trying to say yes to every opportunity coming my way, and it really came back and bit me bum. But I would definitely advise that you really prioritize what is appropriate for your lifestyle. In think about what you want to do. Like, you want to still have a social life. You don't want to be just working all the time and studying. You need to have a social life. You need to have relaxation time. So it's definitely about time management and seeing what can fit in your schedule. That was what I did. And it also was about what interested me. I didn't want to do things I didn't feel like doing. I wanted to do things where, I had a passion for it and I was actually contributing to my community. So that's the
Mm.
advice I would give to students out there.
So as a student at university, I suppose those extra opportunities outside of university fall into two categories. I mean, you could classify them into these two categories, that being paid and unpaid, paid or volunteer.
Mhm.
Obviously, paid jobs are quite attractive to young students. Coming out of high school, you want to earn a buck. Obviously, I don't blame anyone who wants to do that. And obviously, those paid jobs are, quite attractive because of that immediate financial return. But looking at your journey and the things that you've done, as I said, a lot of those were volunteering opportunities. And do you see a benefit to volunteering opportunities as distinct from paid opportunities?
Yes, so definitely, I think volunteering is good. Every student should attempt to volunteer if possible. However,
Mm,
some students have a financial commitment and need to work, and working is more important than volunteering. So always prioritize your needs and what is important to you. But
yeah.
if you do have the means to, volunteering, I think, is a great way to contribute to your community. That was what was important to me. So to me, I sometimes had to prioritize volunteering over work. But it also depends at what stage you are in the degree, right? Like, if you're finishing up, you want to kind of prioritize paid internships or positions that lead to graduate roles and such. So it really depends. I think the best time to do all your volunteering is probably in first year when you don't have as
Mm.
much of a commitment. I think that's what I tried to do as well. But that being said, I did do most of my volunteering in third year actually, and I managed to, somehow you just manage to control everything and manage your time well. So definitely, I think volunteering is a great way to contribute to your community, and you build so many skills volunteering. You meet so many people, you talk to the members of the community. I think that's really important because it gives you perspective, and it also can help you find a passion, I think, for a lot of people. Yeah.
I'm curious, were there any volunteer opportunities that you actually undertook which then led on to, subsequent opportunities and like roles or responsibilities?
Yeah, so I can talk about my journey with Cancer Council.
Yeah.
I initially started volunteering for their Relay for Life events. And when I did that, I had met someone at the event that told me that there was an open position for a program assistant at their head office. And it was to run this program called the Enriching Survivorship Program, which is a program Cancer Council runs to support those that had survived cancer, essentially, and were done with their chemo and radio. And once you're done with chemo and radio, your body isn't the same anymore. So they had chronic health conditions, and also their carers had a significant emotional toll. So Cancer Council does this program called Enriching Survivorship to basically help these people live healthy lives and practice balanced lifestyles, and also for the carers as well to join in and like enjoy this program with their cancer survivor loved ones. So essentially, I applied after hearing about this, and I got the role, and I really enjoyed it. It was one of the most rewarding things I've done. And at this role, I was advised of another potential role for becoming a committee member at the Blacktown Relay for Life. So this was basically a role where it's kind of a high up position where you are involved in organizing the Relay for Life event. And I applied for that. So I guess me being involved with Cancer Council multiple times, it's also through luck. I kind of heard about it when I was at the event, and there's just so happened to be these positions open. But I definitely think volunteering can lead eventually to other opportunities.
I guess that just shows the benefits of, having an open mind to, whatever opportunities fall your way. So one of the interesting things about your journey is the fact that you co-authored a piece in The Conversation, which is quite a popular, I think it's a new popular Australian media publication. Is that right? The Conversation?
Yes.
So you co-authored a piece for The Conversation called "Young People Are Anxious About Coronavirus. Political leaders need to talk with them, not at them." So firstly, can you tell us a bit about that article? Like what were some of the key messages in that article, and what motivated you to be a co-author on that article?
Yeah, so for this article, I was approached by Dr. Melissa Kang, who is the lead author on that article. She had asked me to sort of give my opinions on what it's like being a young person during a pandemic and what we feel about the government's messaging. This was particularly early on in the pandemic. I think it's gotten a lot better now, but early on in the pandemic, there was a lot of conflicting messages, and I think nothing particularly directed to young people. So she had asked me for my opinions on that, and I had given her my opinions, and all of that sort of ended up in the article. But I also, at one point, because I'm a member of this advisory committee on the New South Wales Health, so the Ministry of Health. In this committee, I basically represent the youth of New South Wales, and we talk about issues that young people face. So because I have this role, the ministry had asked me to go out and do some consultations with young people and, try and find out how young people feel about the pandemic, what the government has been doing for young people during this pandemic, and so on. So I was really excited to do this because I really wanted to know how people felt about it and how the government can help. So I took this seriously and I did as many consultations as I could. And we've now written an article about it, and it's being published on a website. So I think that, so I should mention as well, this work has been done through the Wellbeing, Health and Youth Commission, which is a commission I'm part of. That's associated with Western Sydney University. And I'd like to give a shout out to the commission members. And so they basically helped me do the consultations and for my report that I presented to the Ministry of Health and now is published on the website as well.
So with those couple of experiences there, you mentioned like two or three of them. I suppose an underlying theme of those is an interest in like the matters affecting young people, and particularly from a health and well-being perspective. Is that like, is that where part of your passion and interest lies?
Yeah, definitely. I think the commission and the researchers that work with the commission, they've instilled this passion in us to really think about what young people go through. Because often when we talk about health issues, we talk about adults or we talk about children. But
Mm,
there's the bunch in between, the teenagers and the young adults that often get ignored and they experience significant health issues and are never really targeted. So that's really made me think a lot about how things affect this age group. And so when the pandemic hit, I immediately thought of this age group and how they might be affected. So people like us, we're graduating, we're entering a workforce now that's, very impacted by the pandemic and will be impacted for the next few years. I've been thinking about that and I've been talking to young people about that and I've been reporting my findings back to the ministry. So hopefully all this work that I'm doing with young people in the community
mm.
and the work they're doing for the ministry goes back to the ministry and they're actually taking it seriously and doing something about it to help young people.
Out of curiosity, what were some of the findings that you had in those consultations?
Yeah, so I think the main finding that I had was that young people are very anxious. That's kind of obvious. They're very anxious for their future because of how things have played out this year. Even though Australia has been really fortunate, we live in a country that has handled the pandemic really well. One of the biggest concerns is the economic fallout of this pandemic. We're not going to be immune to it. And I think a lot of young people are worried about the workforce they're entering and how it impacts their future. So that was one of the major findings. I think there are other findings as well, like immigrant
Mm,
families not being able to see each other because everyone's, separated in different countries. The mental health toll, particularly in the early stages of the pandemic when we were all isolated from each other.
mm,
So there is a bunch of different things that I reported on, but definitely the anxiety of young people was the largest.
mm. Another interesting sort of landmark or point on your journey is your journey into medical school, which you were recently, admitted to the University of Sydney, as I mentioned earlier. So congratulations on that achievement. I suppose from the outside looking in, like I wouldn't know the first thing about getting into med school, but after reading a few articles about that journey, it's notoriously difficult to gain admission into these medical schools. So I was reading up on some like Forbes surveys which were conducted where they, conducted a survey with 118 ranked medical schools across the US, and the acceptance rate was just over 6.8% in 2018. And in the most competitive, Ivy League medical schools, it was just 2.4%. Obviously, that's a a completely different jurisdiction. You might be able to reflect on your own experience, but I think that reflects a general trend which speaks to the difficulties of gaining admission. So firstly, for someone like myself who doesn't know, the process of gaining admission, what was the process and requirements to get into med school for you?
So it was different this year because of the pandemic. So
Mm,
requirements had changed a little bit, but generally you are required to get a certain GPA, which is based off your undergraduate results. And you have to sit the GAMSAT exam, which is a medical school entrance exam. There's a comprehension section, an essay writing section, and a science section. You got to pass all those sections, not just pass anymore. You got to do really well in those
mhm.
sections. And there's also an interview usually, but this year those interviews didn't happen for USYD, but usually they do.
Was that
So
due to
those
the
are,
pandemic?
yes, that's right.
Okay.
USYD had to cancel their interviews, but I think most of the other, actually all of the other medical universities had their interviews this year.
And was it as competitive as people make it out to be? Was it quite a difficult and arduous journey? You might think I'm an
Yeah.
idiot for asking that, but yeah. So what was that like for you? How did you deal with that?
Uh, I'm not gonna lie, it led to a lot of breakdowns throughout the years.
Yeah.
It's a very stressful process, and you just hear the worst about it from ex-students. Like, I'm sorry, I hate to perpetuate that, but
Mm,
it is quite a difficult journey. You need to be really mentally dedicated to this. There's so many points where you'll want to give up, and I really I really sympathize with those going through this process because I know how hard it is, and um, you just have to keep going. Think of the goal that you want at the end, and keep going through it. But yeah, I think the admission process is quite difficult, and it is a bit of a journey, but it's definitely doable. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I think that it's doable. It just takes a lot of effort.
I mean, given the difficulties of getting into med school, as you mentioned, the competitive landscape, and as well as the massive amounts of time and money that you're investing into that journey, alongside all your university commitments, research commitments, volunteering commitments, at any point along that journey, did you ever think to yourself, like, is this really worth it? Is that something that came across your mind?
Yes, definitely. There were lots of moments, especially when I came across failure. I
Mm,
had to sit the exams out a couple of times, and it didn't always work out, obviously. In the beginning, my scores weren't great. Um, and that really made me question, I was working really hard, but I wasn't getting the scores I wanted, and I didn't know what I was doing wrong. At those points, it really made me want to give up, and it really made me
mm.
think, am I good enough, Um, but this is when it comes down to trusting yourself and trusting the process and just keep on grinding. Like, that's all I told myself. Just keep working, and change your technique. That's what I focused on, trying to improve myself in the different areas of the exam, also preparing for the interview and stuff, even though I didn't have to do one in the end. But I think that definitely there were lots of down times where I felt really down and I doubted myself, but I just had to pick myself up and get through it, again, because of that discipline and routine. Like I said, sometimes emotions get in the way, but you have to have that discipline to get over your emotions and just go through it if it's something that you really want. It comes down to passion in the end, I guess.
So for someone out there who's, potentially, looking to embark on a similar journey to you, who might be, studying an undergraduate degree at university, who might be in high school, potentially, what would be, one piece of advice that you would give to that hypothetical person?
Someone who wants to go to med school?
Yeah.
Yes. My biggest advice is to enjoy your undergrad years. I think a lot of people that pursue medicine forget to, because you just study all the time, but definitely don't let those years go by. You need to enjoy those years, have a social life, make friends. In terms of the actual admission process and how you can get into med school, it's all about just having discipline and routine, and being really like thorough with your preparation. And also, I think people underestimate this, but reading a lot actually helps. I used to read the New York Times and the Economist almost every day in university. It's not related to my degree at all. Like, I didn't have to know it, but it really helps you build an open mind, gain perspective, and I think that really helped me with the GAMSAT, and also it helps with the interview as well. So things like that, broaden your knowledge, broaden your horizons, challenge yourself. All of those skills you develop will eventually help you get into medical school, and also beyond that, I think.
Another opportunity you undertook, while studying your undergraduate degree was working as a medical secretary at the Coroner's Court and Forensic Medicine Complex in New South Wales. You've been doing that for the last couple of years. From my understanding, your role was to prepare autopsy reports for the coroner. So just to start off with, for those that aren't aware, like myself, what exactly does the Coroner's Court do?
Yes. So the coroner's court is essentially a court in New South Wales that where you have a coroner that basically decides if a person that has passed away, if they need to undergo an autopsy. So it's usually for unnatural deaths. For example, like a motor vehicle accident or a fire or suicide, anything like that. The coroner will decide that that person usually needs to undergo an autopsy to investigate and confirm cause of death. So the coroner will basically order one of the forensic pathologists to perform an autopsy. So forensic pathologists are doctors; they have medical degrees that are licensed to perform autopsies and basically look for cause of death in a dead person. And then the medical secretaries type up the autopsy reports that basically summarize the findings from the autopsy and the cause of death, which is then referred back to the coroner for approval.
I'm really curious, what was it like working at the coroner's court? What, like, for example, what was a typical day in the life of a medical secretary at the coroner's court?
It can be very depressing. I'm not going to lie. You have to be very sort of okay with reading about death and reading about how people died. A lot of the times you have to read about the moments leading up to death, and that stuff can be very like confronting. It's certainly not, a joyous occasion to go to work sometimes with the type of cases you deal with. And initially, when I first started my job, I was getting really affected by the cases. Some of the cases were very sad, but I would just I just kind of talk to my friends about it with keeping confidentiality, of course. Just talk to my friends, talk about my feelings, how those cases affected me mentally and emotionally. And that really helped me vent. And now I have to say I'm a lot better at dealing with these cases and I don't let it affect me emotionally. But that being said, there are sometimes cases that are really sad and you just have to sort of take a moment from it and just gather yourself before you can continue. But it's also very interesting to work at the coroner's court because you get to see a lot of interesting cases. And for someone that's interested in medicine, this has been the best job because I've got to learn a lot about pathology, forensic pathology, which is really cool, anatomy. So a lot of things that I've learned that have further further fueled my desire to pursue medicine.
Did you know that, just on that last point, did you know that the job entails and sort of reflected your passions and interests, or was that something that just sort of spontaneously came up?
So it actually spontaneously came up. Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And okay, fair enough. So, I mean, reflecting back on your role at the coroner's court, I mean, did you ever, like coming out of high school, for example, did you ever picture yourself, preparing autopsy reports, for the coroner?
No, I was basically told about this job by a friend.
Mm,
So I thought, let me just apply for it. I'm probably not going to get it because this is my first year of uni. I didn't think
yeah.
I'd get a job here, but I was really lucky and fortunate. And I never imagined myself. It just kind of happened spontaneously. So I wasn't
Okay.
prepared for what it was at all. It was just fortune.
Okay. So another exciting, venture or project that you have, coming up is the launch of your GAMSAT educational business. Is that right? You recently started an online business with a friend called Excel GAMSAT SA Mentoring, where you offer SA resources and mentoring services to GAMSAT students. So where did that inspiration come from to start that e-commerce business?
Um, Well, I was already tutoring after high school. I was tutoring for HSC. So, and I really enjoy tutoring. I really enjoy teaching. That's actually one of my biggest passions. So, I always kind of thought after I completed the GAMSAT and once I got into medical school, that would possibly be an avenue that I would pursue tutoring for GAMSAT because I do know it's quite a difficult exam to prepare for. And so, me seeing the GAMSAT several times, I have developed a certain level of knowledge, I think, that I was willing to share with students. So I always kind of knew that was something I wanted to do, but I had to wait for the right time to do it. And also, I've always really been inspired by entrepreneurs, and I've been inspired by people that have the passion to set up businesses and pursue that business whilst having other commitments. I think that's quite hard. So I've always wanted to do something like that. And the fact that I'm doing it with one of my closest friends is also a really exciting opportunity for us. Uh, and we've been able to manage this quite well. And yeah, I'm excited for how this will turn out.
So for those that don't know, what exactly do you offer GAMSAT students?
So we are currently tutoring for section 2 of GAMSAT, which is the essay writing section. We both performed really well. That was our best section in the whole GAMSAT exam. So we decided that we would want to share our notes. So we're selling those notes that we've prepared for that section. And we also offer essay marking service and other resources as well that are coming soon. So it's mainly tutoring for section 2 of the GAMSAT exam.
Right. So when I come across people who are doing things like you're doing, starting their own business, particularly e-commerce businesses, because those are, today some of the easiest businesses to run in terms of startups. I'm particularly interested in that initial sort of creative process. So were you someone that enjoyed creating a startup business from scratch? Was it quite difficult and challenging for you and your friend? What was that creative process like? Did you like that process and like engaging with it?
Yeah, definitely. I think I particularly enjoyed the marketing aspect. We're still not fully like settled yet. There's still a lot of
Mm,
work we have to do. We only just started this like last week or the week
right.
before.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
still like trying to set this up properly. And I've been thinking of ideas of how we can market our business. But yeah, I think I really enjoy the creative aspect of it. I don't really do much creative things in my life. So this is one of the ways I get to do that, and I really enjoy it. And I think, yeah, it's sort of something chill as well for me. It's not too stressful. The fact
Mm.
that I have my friend as well to help me with organizing stuff, I actually find it really fun. It doesn't seem like a task to me or a chore. So for me, this is a really good adventure.
Another interesting point that came up in our previous discussions um, was when you were reflecting on a piece of advice that a high school teacher gave you about the uncertainty of choosing a certain pathway towards like professional development. I was wondering if you could share that piece of advice with those who are listening, because I mean, you told me that we talked about that, a few weeks ago, and it's something that I still think about today. And I think it's really important for young people to hear as well.
Yeah, so I had Eddie Wu as my math teacher in high school, the famous Eddie Wu. And I think one of the things that I took away, and it's stuck with me until today, is one of the things he said in one of our classes. We were talking to him about how, we don't really know, some of us don't know what we're passionate about. We don't know what to do at uni. We don't know what to do with our careers and such. And he told us about his journey into math teaching. So he said he wasn't really sure what he wanted to do. And when he decided on teaching, he wasn't sure what type of teaching he wanted to pursue. It was when he had gotten to USYD's open day, he spoke to someone that had told him math teaching was, really needed in the country. They didn't have enough math teachers. And so he decided to pursue math teaching. And so he told us what he thought of was basically that if you don't know what exactly you're passionate about, you should think about what your community needs and become passionate about it, which I think is a really good piece of advice and has stuck with me until today. Sometimes you're a bit unsure of what you want to pursue, and that's okay because we're only in our 20s or, we're only teenagers, and that's all right. You're not meant to have everything figured out. So if you don't have to feel upset about it. Look to your community, see what's needed, and try and research it and become passionate about it and potentially pursue that path. So I think that really helped not just me but my classmates as well pick an avenue that they would have followed.
You mentioned there that there's, in your experience, a pressure on students to have things figured out, and I mean, I don't think it's controversial to say that that is a big expectation to have for people who are 15, 16, 17, 18, who are still, figuring things out. So was that something that you experienced yourself in high school as well, that pressure to have things figured out?
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes, I think sometimes you kind of only hear of the success stories. You hear about
Mm,
people that have been successful and knew all their life this is what they wanted to do. And for somebody who doesn't really know that, which I think is actually most teenagers, not everyone knows what they want to do for the rest of their life at the age of
mm.
like 18. When you hear those success stories all the time, you kind of get discouraged and you kind of think, oh, well, I'm not really worth anything if I don't know what I want to do because everyone else does. But the truth is, nobody knows what they want to do. Sometimes people put on an act on because they want to seem like they're confident in their decisions. But the thing is, you just need to look inside you and trust yourself. I think that's the biggest advice I can give. Trust yourself, trust the process. Um, Explore something you like, it doesn't always have to be medicine or law or business. Try explore something you like, and go from there. It's always starts off at your interests and your passions, because if you're not interested in something, you're just not going to be happy. So yeah, I think that it's okay to feel stressed and lost. With time, you'll discover something you're passionate about.
One of the things I was thinking about the other day actually was the platform of LinkedIn, and that what you just said sort of reflected that. I was thinking about, on let's say you have a LinkedIn profile, and you're supposed to list, where you, like, what qualifications you have, where you graduated, university, high school, what achievements you had, who's mentored you, what prizes have you won. And a lot of the times we see the final products, particularly on, for example, a platform like LinkedIn. Obviously, not to say that there's no utility and value in displaying your accomplishments and your achievements and qualifications, because that's something that you should be really proud of. But also recognizing, as you mentioned, that ultimately that is the product, 9 times out of 10, that is the product of years and years of doubts, deliberation, anxiety, and uncertainty. And I think that that's something that that's really that's really reflective of what you've mentioned today. And yeah, that just really reminded me of that thought I had earlier. One of the final things I want to talk about today, I suppose it's more of a general question, something that I have been grappling myself, is just on that uncertainty of whether you're on the right path. So in your experiences, were there times when you just knew you were working towards something of significance or of value? Were there telltale signs that you had found something that you were really passionate about or that you really enjoyed? For example, did you find that you were in a better frame of mind? Did you find that you were in a happier place? Did you find that, as we mentioned earlier, did you find that work became less of a chore and more enjoyable? Were there any telltale signs for you that you just knew that you were on the right path?
Yeah, definitely. I think my journey to where I am today started, like I said, in high school when I was studying biology, and I really loved it. That's what made me pursue my degree, because I knew that I would enjoy learning about it. And I didn't want to jump straight into medicine because I was unsure about it at that stage. So I never forced myself into anything I wasn't ready for. I just, took my time with it, went to university. And when I was studying university, I really enjoyed it. So I knew that's where my heart was. And I don't think I could have done anything else, really. So when I was in my degree, yes, like when I was telling you, the failures I experienced with the GAMSAT, sometimes even in my own degree, it made me question myself and doubt the process and think to myself, am I on the right path? Definitely. But I think, getting myself up again and trying hard and loving the process again made me realize this is right for me, and I always, with my volunteering experiences, I really enjoyed working with people. So that also reassured me that I was on the right path. So yeah, I think I'd have to say that just enjoying what I was doing made me realize this is what I'm meant to be doing. And I'm sure in the next 4 years, while I do medicine, there'll be times where I'll doubt the process again, doubt myself. But it comes down to the passion, I think. And if I realize that I'm loving it, despite the certain, the occasional downfalls, that's when I'll know that this is where I'm supposed to be.
Reflecting on those experiences, has your approach to failure changed over the years? Starting off from from high school, as you mentioned, that some of the challenges and obstacles that that you faced, and you may have encountered failure at that initial stage. Do you have a particular approach to failure? Has that changed over time for you?
Hmm. Definitely, yeah. I think in high school I was very I was very rigid at times. So
Mm,
when I didn't do as well as I wanted to, sometimes it would just, I would not react well and I would be very disappointed. But over time, I kind of learned that that is toxic for yourself. It's not good to treat your failures like that, because you don't need to put yourself through that much pressure, I think. And you need to look at failure as an opportunity to learn. It's not really a failure, really. It's more of just an opportunity to learn and to grow. And if you look at it that way, I think you won't feel as pressured and you won't feel as stressed or disappointed. So that's the mindset. I'm still working on it because it doesn't always go that way. At times when you really want something and you don't get it, it sucks and you will feel sad. But I'm still working on developing that mindset where I'm looking at mistakes or failures, as they say, as things to work on, things to improve on, things on that I can learn to grow from. As opposed to looking at it in a negative view. So it is a bit of a process, and it's taken me years, and I'm still learning how to do that. But yeah, I definitely think that failures should not be looked at as failures.
Okay. Keshini, that pretty much brings us to the end of our time together. I just wanted to say a big thank you for your time today. Particularly, I just want to thank you, for your real openness and transparency. I thought, some of the insights and perspectives that you gave, from my experience, I haven't heard of a lot of the challenges and obstacles of someone who is pursuing, a profession such as yourself. So I just wanted to say a big thank you for your openness and transparency. I know, for the people that are listening, if there's, only one thing that they take out of this conversation, I'll be really happy. And, I just want to thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.